So I wanted to discuss the logistics of androcentric maxing in the West. And when I say West, I'm generally speaking about the United States, Canada, Western Europe, by and large. Even though you could argue that Western Europe is actually much cheaper. Like it's easier to androcentric max in Western Europe because it's cheaper. The United States tend to be way more expensive in that aspect. And then also there are many areas where it's perfectly allowed to androcentric max. And also you could be in a major city, you could get around. It's very convenient. It's much more convenient in Western Europe in that sense. Whereas in the United States, not as much. So if you take North America, for example, you could say that the logistics are pretty messed up. And one thing I was thinking about earlier, in fact, I recorded this before, but it didn't sound good, so I'm doing it again. But what I was thinking about was, if somebody in the United States, like let's say you're working, you have a job, and you like a corporate job, for example, and you said, okay, I wanna go on a vacation. I wanna go, on a androcentric vacation for a couple of days. Typically in the United States, you're gonna have about 3 weeks of vacation, 15 days per year that you can go. You could take that time off, and you can say, okay, I'm gonna go overseas somewhere. And typically, if you wanted to androcentric max, you would go to South America, Caribbean. You wouldn't go too far. You would go to a place that's not too far where you could actually do it, and where it wouldn't be that expensive. At least compared to the United States, it would be a lot cheaper, right? How much time do you really have, right? If you have 15 days vacation, how much time can you go on a vacation like that? You could maybe take 5 days. You could say, okay, I'm gonna take 5 days and I'm gonna go on this quick vacation. Because the 15 days that you have, you kind of have to save some of those days for other things, like if you have an emergency or something like that. So you don't really have 15 days that you could use for vacation. You have to save some of those days. So let's say you have 10 actual days you could use for a vacation. Half of that, like, okay, you're gonna go to South America somewhere on a 5-day vacation. That's something you could maybe do once a year. You save as much money as you can. You go down there. You have sort of a good time. You kind of enjoy it, but it's not something you could do often, right? You do it once a year. Logistically, it's not something you can do consistently. It's not something that's gonna provide like a major lasting impact on you for the whole year. Okay, you may do it for a week for the summer. It's fun, but then now you have to get back to work and you're looking forward to next year. It just doesn't really work. I mean, in the US, the people who can afford to androcentric max tend to be guys who just have a lot of money. I mean, the culture encourages it. Like when you have a lot of money, the culture encourages androcentric maxing. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the culture doesn't encourage it. Once you have a certain amount of cash, the culture sort of encourages you to androcentric max. You can sort of do certain things. You could spend as much money as you want. If you're a rapper, an entertainer, you're in that industry, an influencer, you could definitely go all out and really do. But it's expensive. That's why you gotta have a lot of money. But for the average guy, you can't really do that. Okay. Now, even if you were a guy that was making 6 figures a year, you have a pretty decent salary. You're making 6 figures a year. The likelihood that you could actually do something like this is still not as guaranteed as people may think. Let's say you make 6 figures a year and you say, okay, I'm gonna take a vacation next week or next month. I'm going to Las Vegas. I'm going to Miami, and I'm gonna spend $20,000 to $25,000 on a vacation. Most people can't do that, by the way, right? But if you happen to be, let's say you make 200 grand a year, 300 grand a year, and you want to go take a $25,000 vacation in Las Vegas. Sounds great so far. You show up to Las Vegas, you have your $25,000, you're staying at a nice hotel, and you're like, let me go Andro Maxxing. Let me go Andro Maxxing. And you show up, and you go to the club, and you get life-denying service. You get bad service. Why is that? Why do you get life-denying service? Well, the reason why you get life-denying service is because you go into a place where the people there are used to millionaires, multi-millionaires, guys who can afford to spend $20,000 in one night, $50,000 in one night. You show up, you got your little $20K that you're gonna spend for 5 days. You can't afford to do that. You still, even though it's still a lot of money, you still have to manage it. You can't spend it in one night, in one place, in one location. You get bad service. Right? You don't get the top tier service you thought you were gonna get for 20K. Right? And then you look back, you're like, God damn, I just wasted my time, and I just wasted $20,000 going to Las Vegas. So even then, you're still not getting something that should be good enough. Okay, even if you have your nice 6-figure salary, doing something like that is still not guaranteed to actually yield what you thought, because the logistics are not set up that way. The logistics are not set up in your favor to do it like that. Again, like I said, if you're in Western Europe, you happen to be in a major city, Western Europe, Amsterdam, Paris, London, you could do that. You could do those things. The only difference is that in Western Europe, you have the convenience. You could do these things, but it's still going to be very expensive, right? If you're in Amsterdam, you're trying to go all the way out, you're trying to Andro Max, it's still going to cost you some money. You're trying to do it in London, you're still going to spend a pretty penny. Okay? It's better than the United States, don't get me wrong, in all kinds of ways. In the United States, you're not going to get the best service. People are looking for shortcuts in the US. And even if you spend a lot of money, chances are you're going to get subpar service because they're looking for shortcuts. In Europe, they might provide top tier. They might do all that. It's going to cost you. Europe is from an androcentric standpoint, is better than the United States, right? Because remember, if you're talking about logistics, it's more convenient in terms of you could get it in your own city. You don't have to do like the US and go to Vegas or Miami, or go to like a central hub spot, right? That's the downside of being a big country like the US. If you live in a small town, which most people do, you can't really androcentric max like that. You'd have to like go to one of the major cities, which again is not quite convenient if you have to work. Okay, most people don't have that flexibility. They're not able to just work remotely like that. Their boss doesn't want that. You have to be at the office Monday to Friday. You get some time off. You only get 3 weeks off for the whole year. It just doesn't work in your favor from an androcentric standpoint. You can't really afford. It just doesn't. The system is not built that way. Now, as far as the cost, expensive, it's not convenient. Logistically, it just doesn't work. So again, that's sort of what I was thinking about, and I was trying to explain it that way. So what's the strategy? What do you do? Because you need something that's more consistent. You need something that you can actually rely on weekly, right? Because some guys, when it comes to androcentrism, they need something that they can do. Some guys, it all depends on your pace. Like how often do you want to Andro Max? Is it once a week? Is it twice a week? Is it every single day? Some guys, they have to do it every day. Some guys, like, it's just not that often. If you cannot find something where you could actually do it at a pace that works for you, the question is, what's the point? The question is, it doesn't work. If you can do it at a pace that's convenient and comfortable, it doesn't work. Logistically, you could do it. You could Androcentric Max once a year. You go to South America, you go to Caribbean, or if you have a decent salary, you go to Las Vegas, Miami. Even then, the service might be subpar. You might not get what you paid for. You might not get what you thought you were gonna get from that standpoint. Logistically, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So that's what I wanted to discuss. If you compare Western Europe to the US, easier in Western Europe is still not accessible to most workers there, especially most workers there make less money too. That's the downside of Western Europe. But anyway, keep me posted. Let me know what you think, because you need a long-term strategy for that. You need a long-term strategy. By the time you become aware of that problem, you're like, okay, what do I do? How do I come up with a remote work strategy, flexible work where I can travel when I want? How do I make more money? How do I figure it out? By the time you become aware of all that stuff, you kind of realize that it's gonna take a lot more work. It's gonna be much more difficult to actually solve that. That's why it's a major issue. It's not something you solve overnight. You need, how do you come up with online sources of income? You could make 6 figures or maybe high 5 figures. Have that flexibility where you could travel, Androcentric Max when you need to and you want to, be able to save money. You need a long-term strategy. You need that's something that we need to figure out. It's one thing to talk about Androcentric Maxing all day long, but you need concrete strategies, you need concrete solutions. So keep me posted in the comments.